Welcome. Today we're going to be discussing the technique Raking Mace and some of the more important principles, theories, rules, concepts, and strategies of this technique. So keep in mind Raking Mace is a middle ranking technique and there's a lot of things going on at the exact same time. So we're going to do our best to break these things out, make them comprehensible, but keep in mind it's pretty complex. So let's start out with the attack. The attack itself is even a little bit more complex than we normally have. It's a two-hand grab, but it also has a pull-in, okay? So we call this an applied minor. So there's two things that we have to think about here. One is rule number one, establishing our base. Two is how we're going to do that. We have two ways of dealing with things. One, because we want to deal with them, and two, because we have to. So in this case, how does it apply to rule number one? They're pulling us forward. If I wanted to step backwards, purposefully step backwards, I can't. I'm compelled to step forward because of the pull. So this is called compelled compliance. In other words, we're compelled to do what they want us to do, but this is where our strategy starts coming in. We want to comply with what's going on here, get the upper hand, and then start to hit them and take advantage of them while keeping them where we want them to be. That's the overall strategy. So as we go forward, keep that in mind. So let's talk through all of this stuff. So the first thing is rule number one, establishing that base, which brings in the concept of gauging. They're pulling me forward, but I want to control how they're pulling me forward because I want to counter and get the upper hand here. So I need to gauge where I'm going to step because as I begin to do my counters on this opponent, I need to be at the proper distance from them so things aren't jammed or out of reach. So keep that in mind. So as I begin to step forward, what I want to do is make sure that my counter here, which is going to be the uppercut, has proper alignment and proper depth. We're going to be using two power principles simultaneously. The depth, which is backup mass, and the height, which is gravitational marriage. In this case, an upward direction, which we call gravitational opposition. So there's a concept that comes into play here. In order to make backup mass, and in this case, gravitational marriage possible, we need alignment. So what does that mean? That means I need to get this where I want it to be on the angle I want it to be. So in this case, it's an uppercut. It is not an inverted punch. The way you want to think about it is, as you said on your stance, this is coming up and under their ribs, up into their lungs. So you want to think of folding those ribs backwards and forward. Now, simultaneously with that is what's going on with my left hand. So we've talked about the gauge stepping forward, the right hand, but we also have our left hand to come into play. We need to get the upper hand. So in this case, what we need to do, we want to control these weapons because they could at any point let go. So we want to prevent that from happening. So what we do is we take our left hand, put it on top of their left hand, and then pin the right hand. So we call that getting the upper hand, in this case physically. And that gives us a conceptual upper hand too, because now we have control of our opponent. They thought they had control of us. Now we're taking control with the situation by taking control of them. So as we step forward, we do all this punch. We did it all great. Everything's perfect. We controlled their depth zone with this punch and everything, but we only controlled the depth zone on the low end. What happened with the upper hand? Upper end here. This is what's called a reactionary position. They're going to come in and they're going to react to what we did to them. In this case, headbutt us. Could be purposeful or inadvertent, but we have to worry about that. There's two things we can do. One could be just to bend our head so we go to head, but this technique doesn't do that. What it does is it takes the left hand and it makes sure that they don't position themselves inadvertently or purposefully, but we want to purposefully position them where they want to be. So the way to think about this is gauging. Again, we've gone from gauging with our foot to gauging with our hand, and then at the end, we're going to do gauging again with our foot again. So that's the way to think about what's going on here. So why do we need the gauging? Because if I don't get this person where I want them to be, I can't hit them with my follow-up strikes. Okay, so this brings in another concept. I want to hit them with the follow-up strike, but my hand's here, so I have to bring it all the way out in order to hit them again. So that's another thing that this left hand does. It allows me the time, in other words, don't make a cock or separate motion to bring my right hand out, position them where I want to be, in other words, gauge with my hand so that I can hit them with this raking back knuckle. Okay, so I don't want one, then two, I want one with two. Don't make a cock or separate motion. So now once we're in this position again, we're now going to take this left hand and bring it back again. Why? Because if I begin to position this person, they can let go again. So one way to think about this potentially is this left hand is doing what we call elastic recoil. It's really not, but there's two ways to do an elastic recoil. One is by using the beginning, and the other one is to use the end, where I actually do the chop and come back. The better way to think about this one is not the elastic recoil at the beginning to get the upper hand and to chop them, but to actually chop and come back from the other hands. And that brings in the next piece here. We've done this raking back knuckle, and now we're going to take this left hand and we're going to do an elastic recoil at the beginning to get to this chop. So I can enhance that chop with my left shoulder if I want in order to get that chop. This brings in yet another concept, mirroring. I'm doing the chop with the left, and now I'm doing the chop with the right. Okay, so that, and then we're moving the elastic recoil from the beginning, or the end in this case with the left, to the beginning with the right. Now that we've got this hand here, we now have to go back to this gauging again. So foot maneuvers are added as needed. If I'm a lot taller than this opponent, I can easily elbow this person, but I'm not. So what I'm going to have to do is add these foot maneuvers or gauging in order to get to the point where I can elbow this person effectively. Now, in order to do that, that brings in yet a couple more concepts. One is ratcheting. So what I'm going to do is I don't want to pull this hand back out. What I want to do is use my fingers as a pivot point in order to help me gauge where that elbow is going to be with the foot maneuver below, and that's called ratcheting. The second concept here is vice-like maneuvers. In this case, it's a specialized vice-like maneuver where both elements are moving at the same time, and we call that sandwiching. Okay, so that covers the base technique, but we want to add one more idea here. Formulation equation. This person grabs me, and I am pinning their hand. Well, I can do an insert. In this case, a specialized insert. We call this a prefix. It's done before the base part of the technique. So in this case, the concept is, in order to turn a defense into an offense, we can expand the circle. And the opposite is true. In order to turn an offense into a defense, we can contract this circle. So now that we've covered all these concepts, let's walk through the technique pretty slow that you can see it being executed. Up. Hope this video helps you understand the American Kenpo system just a little bit better. Thank you very much.